Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. All right, welcome to this episode of Man Alive. We are rolling, and Tony Fonderson is back. We did a podcast a couple months ago, maybe called Honest Sex. And as Tony and I continue having conversations, we realize maybe we're going to do this a lot more because there's so much that comes up. And as we were talking today, we decided that we were going to get into this topic of to say it or not say it. Right? How and what do you communicate with a partner to actually make it more likely that there's closeness, that there's passion, that there's trust, all the good things, right? How does your communication foster that as opposed to kill it or break it down or, erode, right? I know in my marriage years ago, I could see what we were doing that eroded the foundation of trust in the relationship, right? I'll say one of the biggest things I would do was say, well, maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe we should just call it quits, right? And I can see looking back that was a very protective measure that I was taking because I was like, well, fine, I'll just leave you first before you can leave me. And yet I eroded the trust in our relationship, with that dynamic. And I can see that now. So let's dive into a conversation about, whether to say it or not. And I know, Tony, you were saying before we pressed the record button that you believe we should be able to say everything. You want to give a little more, expand on that?
Yeah, I think communication is like one of the foundations of any relationship, but it's one of the hardest things to do right all the time. Yeah. And when we are in relationship with somebody that we really love, obviously we want to maintain that bond. We want to strengthen that bond. So how do we do that? We do that by saying things that pleases them. We do that by saying things that brings us together.
That's what we think.
As you know, and as I know, you've got to discuss everything. And life isn't only a bed of roses. There are all sorts of different things of life that you've got to negotiate. There are all sorts of things, situations that you face. Yeah. And sometimes you've got to discuss things that upsets you or things that you would like to change. Yeah. And obviously, or things which your partner may find sensitive or things which you are very, very touchy about and you don't know even how to communicate that to yourself, let alone to someone that you love.
Yeah.
And through our fear of damaging the great relationship that we have, sometimes, we don't want to say what needs to be said. And that in and of itself is a big challenge that so many people face.
Well, yeah. And then what I see is like the more you shove things under the rug, the taller the rug gets, right? And then it's like, I'm imagining the game Jenga where the tower, that you stack the bricks and you take out the foundations and you put them on top. And then it's like, until it's
wobbling.
Yeah, it's very
until it topples over like a stack of dominoes.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about with my parents where I saw them not address, and the lack of closeness that happens as a result. But what were you going to say?
Yeah, I think our parental role models have a part to play in this, how we grew up and what we observed as growing up on the situations where it's safe. I think safety is a big aspect in communication. Do you feel safe enough to really express what you think and feel?
Ooh.
Or do you kind of take the temperature and say what doesn't make waves?
Yeah. Well, then it's like, okay, how do we describe safety, right? Because do you feel safe if you know, well, I can say this and my partner won't get mad? Or do you feel safe if you know I can say this and we're actually committed and we're not going to leave each other? Or, right, do we find safety within our own selves? Or does someone else actually create safety for us? I love getting to the root.
You've got a whole palette of options there, and that's one of the things that I think you discover as a relationship grows and it develops, because let's say I, as an individual, when I'm single, I may be very, very safe in my thoughts, in my world, with people whom, whether I upset them or I don't upset them, it doesn't have a big impact in my life. I may feel very safe with, but with my beloved, with my partner, I'm like, oh my God, first of all, I love you so much. So I want you to be the happiest. I want your life to be smooth. I want your life to be easy. And I treasure our relationship. So I don't want to do anything that threatens that.
Right.
So if I think I'm going to say something that could kind of upset or jeopardize, you're like, I'm going to think twice. And then I become self-conscious, or I might become nervous.
Yeah.
And so maybe not out of design, with the best intentions in the world, I don't say something because I'm scared of kind of damaging what we have.
Yeah.
But it could be that my silence is a bigger threat to our relationship if I just came out and said it.
Right, especially
in relationships, sometimes we just don't feel safe enough. It's really hard to sit down to your partner and say, I don't know how I'm going to say this. I have something to tell you, and I don't even know how I'm going to express this, but I feel it has to be said. So please don't bite my head off, or this is really my stuff. It's my fear.
I love what you just said, because that's actually what I suggest with people and with couples, is to set a context, right? Like, I don't know how I'm going to say this. I'm afraid of your response, and I love you. And so I want to say this in order for us to get closer, right? To have a context before we throw things at each other, which, it takes some mastery, I think, and it takes a willingness and a capacity to have really intense feelings and still maintain a kind of clarity or intention in the midst of having those feelings.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think the intention, well, for me personally, if somebody's going to come with me with any negative news, one thing I'm scanning for and I'm listening for is the intent behind their words.
Yes.
Sometimes somebody may tell me something which is factually true, it's honest, but sometimes the truth can be used as a weapon.
Right.
It can be used as a way to damage or injure or hurt someone, even
right.
though it's true.
I think we have to be aware, especially as couples, but everywhere in life, right? Is my intention in this moment to hurt my partner? Which, to just be honest, right? That happens, because sometimes if I'm hurting, I want someone else to hurt. Or is my intention right now actually to be closer? Is my intention to be curious and get to know my partner? Or is my intention to be right and already, act like, well, this is never going to change, or I know who you are. So, right. So I think then there's some work to do on our own side as we're considering communicating the things that are important to us. Okay, well, what is my intention here?
Yeah. The intention, I think, is quite important. And another thing that I've seen with lots of couples who come to ask me for advice, and I've experienced this before on the negative side, is sometimes I just have my resting face, which is not very...
For those
I'm
who
not glowing or
not watching,
sweetness and light.
You made a face,
and I'm just doing something, and the people around me, my kids or my partner, may think that, Jesus Christ, well, why are you in such a bad mood? But I'm not in a bad mood. That's my
resting
normal face. I'm no, you're kind of radiating negativity. I'm no, I'm not radiating negativity. And then I get defensive, and then that breaks down. So the point I'm trying to make is that sometimes our nonverbal language communicates something.
Yes, often.
And then our beloved receives a completely different message than what we want to communicate.
Yeah. Well, that's a huge fight, right? Between a lot of couples, like, well, your tone, you're saying it in this way, and you're not using a very nice tone, right?
Yeah. And when you're saying it in this way, that means you're angry. You look so angry. I get the feeling that I'm not welcome here. You're like, what do you mean you're not welcome here? You know?
Well, right. And then interesting how it goes back and forth, and it's like this battle then. Well, you are being like this, and when you're like this happens. And then we become like the authority on the other person versus, oh, when I hear you, right, this is the nonviolent communication piece. Mm-hmm. When I hear your voice go up an octave, I start to feel scared. Or
I start trembling. Yeah. Mm-hmm. My heart starts quivering, or, you know, I feel really, I get sweaty palms or whatever. And I think the art of communication is, not only do we have to know how to transmit, to be clear on what we want to transmit, the message that we want to communicate, we want to transmit to our partner, but we also have to be interested enough in our partner to learn their style, their quirks, the best way to connect with them, and to learn how to correct. Because nobody's perfect. I mean, we're human beings, we're not robots, we don't get it right all the time, we're not meant to get it right all the time.
Yeah.
So we are going to make mistakes, we are going to trip over. And I think one skill that's worth developing in a relationship is how to reconnect when the connection has been kind of like diminishing.
Yeah.
And if we are interested enough in our partner to learn the best ways of reconnecting, and if we are open to our partner's attempts to reconnect to us, then we'll be okay. It may be bumpy, but we'll be all right.
It takes a lot of humility. I mean, so my partner and I consciously engaged, I don't know if you would say a fight, but, you know, we basically knew that we had something to talk about that was going to be hard this weekend. And we got into it a little bit, and it was a little messy and it was a little raw. And I was welcoming it. I was like, okay, if there's something you need to tell me, I would like to know. And we went through the whole, but maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe it is a big deal. And I was like, well, I think we should just go for it, you know? And it was a little messy, but the reconnecting process happened so quickly. And I think part of it was a humility on both of our sides of being able to say, I see how I'm getting defensive here. And I see, and I could feel like there were moments where I had to swallow and breathe and close my eyes and be like, I apologize for the reaction I just had. That was not really what I wanted to say, right? Like, it was like, I had to like push it out of me, even though this part of me really didn't want to own that or apologize for that, right? Mm-hmm. And so then I can see all these different pieces too around, where we take things personally, where we react, getting to know our partner's reactions. How do we have space for, I know that reaction that you have, and I know that at some point you're going to come around, but how personally do I take it, right? There's so many layers to this.
Yeah. And it's a good thing. I think sometimes disagreements can lead to us expanding as people. It can connect us to, we can get reconnected to parts of us that we haven't been connected to in a long time.
Yes.
And we can discover new parts of us that we didn't even know existed, and also with one another. So it's an opportunity for us to grow internally as individuals and for us to grow as a couple. But sometimes, it causes, a break. And sometimes a relationship does need a good fight.
Right.
Things need to be said. Things need to be reset. People need to reassess where they're going or where they'll go in the future. And, agreements need to be renegotiated, or new agreements need to be established. So,
well, that's a beautiful piece.
Yeah.
Right?
So fights aren't necessarily always a bad thing. I mean, they don't feel good. They don't feel comfortable, but it doesn't mean that it should automatically lead to something negative. Not at all.
Well, right. And I love what you just said about, okay, so one way to look at integrity is like, well, I do what I say I was going to do and I keep my agreements, right? But if you take a step farther back, well, what if at some point in my life I created an agreement with my partner and I'm starting to realize, wait, that doesn't feel true to me anymore, or that doesn't feel like I'm honoring myself in this agreement. And so, I mean, if we could actually see that before we need to come up with a fight or a conflict, right? That would be amazing. But often it's like we have to butt up or scrape against each other to really see. And can we have space for, I mean, the other thing you and I were talking about is, can you love your partner so much that you want the best for them, even if it isn't what you want?
Yeah, exactly. That's a massive piece. And that's, I think that takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of, how can I say? I love you so much that if need be, I'll set you free.
Yeah, and to be willing to set a partner free, which I think often creates a stronger bond, right? Talk about safety. I mean, I feel safer after this weekend having this conversation and seeing how we can recover, or like you said, reconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I feel safer in a relationship where we have our best interests, we have each other's best interests in mind, versus, absolutely, right, I've got to make sure that we stay no matter
all costs. Exactly, yeah. I mean, sometimes you can hold on to somebody so tight that you suffocate them, literally you strangle them. I mean, it's no laughing matter. This happened when I had a friend who had this pet hamster and who loved this pet hamster. She kept on hugging and hugging and hugging, and one day she hugged the hamster and the hamster was no more because she inadvertently hugged her darling hamster to death.
Wow.
Not a laughing matter, but I think there was a lesson in that for me.
There's a lesson in that.
Sometimes we can hold on to someone or a situation so tightly that it's really, really bad, both for them and for us.
Yeah.
And I think as parents, I've got 2 adult children, and there came a time in my life when I had to let them go. They flew the coop through different circumstances, like when I got divorced. We were living together after I got divorced, and then after a while they had to move to their mother. And so for me, that emptiness syndrome came when they were in their teens. And it was so, I really didn't realize the depth of my connection to them until they left home.
Interesting.
And, my other siblings who'd experienced, the kids leaving home, they're going to university, or the kids have grown up, they're leaving home, the emptiness syndrome phase.
Yeah.
It is a phase. And, when you love someone so much and you have to let them go, even though you love them and even though you know that they have to, make their own transition in life, boy, it takes some coping. I mean, at least that was my experience. It really took me many, many months before I could come to terms with that and realize that, it was the best for them. They needed to go. They needed to experience something else in their lives.
It's so interesting.
I wanted them to be with me all the time because...
Right. And in parenting, I feel like it's a little more forced. It's forced upon us in a certain way. I mean, we could try to keep the kids home and not go to school or whatever. But in our adult relationships, our adult romantic relationships, I think there is a lot more of that. Well, nobody's forced to leave, so therefore we can grasp on a little bit tighter or feel terrified of having some of those conversations. And I often have men I work with coming to me, and there are conversations they want to have, or, I talked to someone recently, I said, well, have you talked about your sex life and the things that you're wanting? And they're like, no, I wish I could, but it feels uncomfortable. I've had a lot of men say that to me, and women too, right? I wish we could have this conversation. So then it's interesting to look at, well, all right, if there are conversations we want to have or things we're settling for, what is it that makes us, where do we find the courage to actually say, oh, I would like to try this, or this isn't working for me? I mean, in some ways, I think it does rest in, well, if ultimately we figure out that we really want different things, maybe we would set each other free, right? I'm curious, where do you think that courage can come from?
I think it really comes in a sense of, I think our self-esteem has a big part to play here.
Yes.
I really think that because in romantic relationships, there is a certain fairy tale component whereby I fall in love, I found someone who completes me, I found somebody who makes, the colors of the world brighter, makes the fragrances smell much nicer, who makes me connect to certain parts of me in a way that I don't connect to those parts of me when I'm alone. But when I'm in your presence, I feel me so much more.
Which is like danger, book note.
Kind of, yeah, because especially if that's a more passionate, a kind of sexual thing, because you can have that on a physical level, you can have that on an emotional heart-to-heart level, or you can have that on a soul consciousness level, or all three. So when we find this person with whom we light up, there's a sense of wanting them to keep them with us forever.
Right.
And if there's anything
then I can
kind of triggers our sense of loss, that we're going to lose them, not only do we have to cope with that in the present, where I'm going to lose this person, it triggers old memories of loss.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with a kind of double whammy effect of like, oh my God, I'm going to face losing you now. And then I'm going to recall all the times in the past when either I was rejected or, you know, I had to reject somebody and I felt bad and guilty. And all of those feelings come up in us. And it's really hard to stay centered in ourselves, be authentic in ourselves, and be true to ourselves, and also be true and respectful to our partner or our situation. Yeah. And I think that a certain degree of self-awareness and self-esteem is needed to be able to.
I wholeheartedly agree with that, right? I mean, to really recognize that when we have disagreements or when we have conflicts, that a lot of that, I don't know how to assign a percentage, right? But a lot of what we deal with in the moment is actually based on our experiences from the past, wounds from the past, stories from the past, fears from the past. You know, it's like, how often are we actually sitting in front of someone and recognizing, oh, this is who you are in this moment, right? We often assign, but unconsciously or subconsciously, oh, this is what my father did to me. This is what my mother did to me. This is how I didn't feel like I belonged when I was young. All these things come up. And so that awareness, to me, I don't know how couples do it without that self-awareness, without therapy or meditation or coaching or something, because it's like we're all kind of minefields in that way.
It is a minefield, but I think that people are they do the best that they can. And sometimes it's the love that sustains them. Sometimes it's sheer luck. Sometimes it's persistence. And sometimes there's a degree of, dare I say, martyrdom, whereby we say, okay, I know that this is easy. I hate it. It sucks, but I'm just going to soldier on through. And
and settle.
I can't tell you the number of couples who I know either, you know, through design or through friendship or through other means, whereby they're just together, not because they want to be with each other. They're together just simply because
they are.
The pain of the disruption that's going to be in their lives if they split up is so much that they'd rather put up with the pain of being with each other and being unhappy.
Right. And not take that risk of, here's what's actually upsetting me in this moment, or here's where I don't feel close to you in this moment, or here's how I wish we could, you know, do things or be together. It's like, I mean, and that part makes me so sad and also fascinated at the human dilemma.
Yeah, it's a really human thing whereby, you know, as you said, you brought the word in there, which I think is a big factor, the risk.
Yeah.
Should I risk, losing what I know, which I know doesn't really satisfy me, but it's a known quantity.
And some people would call that safe.
Out there and going into the unknown,
yes.
Which is a completely new environment whereby, oh my God, will I be able to handle this?
Right. Right. And that's the interesting part, going back to safety, right? Where it's like some people use that or call that safety. Oh, well, this is known, so it's safe. And I would rather be safe than uncomfortable or risk or alone, or like you're saying.
Yeah. And some people know that they don't want to be alone.
Yeah.
And they would rather be with someone and be unhappy with someone rather than be alone and be unhappy alone.
Yeah.
And it's a valid choice. And
right.
I think that there are lots of sections of society that kind of marginalize or are very, very dismissive to people who've made these conscious choices. And I don't think that's the right way. I think everybody knows sometimes you don't have the fortitude or the strength to strike it out on your own or to end something which has negative aspects, and you need to gather the strength, or you need to regroup, or you need to figure out a solution, and sometimes you need time, so you stay in a suboptimal situation.
Yeah.
And I think that those of us on the outside who maybe have been in those situations and have left, I was in a marriage, and I ended our marriage.
Yeah.
But it wasn't easy.
No.
It wasn't.
Right. It's not easy.
It was more like a kind of 49% to 51% kind of decision, and it changed over time, and it took a long time for me to work up the courage to actually do that, and to deal with the consequences of the disruption that it had in our lives, and to cope with all of my fears. And I would never, how can I say, judge someone negatively for choosing to stay because they recognize that they don't have the resources or the
fortitude, the resources.
Those, they're not black and white situations at all. I think society and the world should be a lot more sympathetic. People do things for a reason.
Yes, always.
Even if that reason doesn't make sense to us.
Yeah.
And even if that reason doesn't make sense to them.
Yes.
But there is a reason behind that.
There is a reason.
If we stop to take time and look at the reasons rather than just judge blindly, I think we could do a little bit more with a little bit more compassion.
Which is another really beautiful tool for a relationship, is that when we can assume the best about our partner, right? When we can say, like, there's some reason he or she or they are saying it like this. There's some reason why this desire is here. And there's some reason why this upset is here. And I like to say, can I assume the best and then get curious versus assuming the worst or attacking before we actually get a sense of what's going on? I mean, I've been surprised so many times, and realized, oh, okay, there is a reason for this.
Yeah, and sometimes the words that we use or the message that we communicate, that's just like the opener. It's not the real thing that we want to communicate.
Yes. The tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, it's the tip of the iceberg, as you say. Like, I want to go to Kansas, but I'm saying, I really want to go to the airport. And no, I want to go to Kansas. But okay, let's just get out of the house. And then maybe when we're at the airport, I'll muster up the courage to say where I really, really want to go. And maybe I don't even want to take the plane. Maybe I just want to take the train. But let's go to the airport. Just and we're human beings. And if we can hold space for our partners when they're squirming and when they're in this discomfort trying to communicate what's on their mind, if we can just relax and kind of create an environment in which they can also finally get it out.
Yes.
Even if it's frustrating to us, even if we're not in the best mood, and even if we feel a bit frustrated, I think that's always very helpful.
I think so.
I mean, I've had two partners, my current girlfriend and partner in the past, who really, when I was struggling to say what I wanted to say and I didn't have the words to say it, and I was humming and hawing, and they were just held space, and they were so welcoming, and they just, gave me the time and the place and the space to work out what I wanted to say by being receptive. I'll always be grateful to them.
God, maybe we all have that
together.
Yeah, I feel grateful for your partner, because it's huge to be able to sit in, with somebody else's discomfort and confusion and fear, and just be like, okay, I'm going to welcome this. So, all right, as we're wrapping up for today, knowing that maybe we're going to do this a lot more, let's just see what else we want to say about, do we say it or do we not say it, and how to communicate in a way that creates closeness rather than pushes someone away. What are your final thoughts?
I would say try to get a little bit of clarity on what you want to say and what you want to get. Because sometimes we're not sure we have an emotion, but we can't put that emotion in words.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just want to be heard. We just want to express that
without
a response. And sometimes we do want a certain response.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't want a particular response.
Right.
So,
to be clear about that, like, here's how I'd like you to hear me, or here's how I'd like you to respond to me, or
and here's like what I absolutely don't want. Yeah. And so sometimes I think trying to get a little bit of clarity before you venture, if it means you have to rehearse what you're saying to yourself or to a trusted friend, or if you need to write it down, I think start with clarity. That's what I'd advise. I can only say that's a good starting point. And it's one of those things where if you take the courage to make that first step and clarify things to yourself, maybe then you'll be able to take the next step and the next step and the next step. So that's what I
clarity. That feels really, really good and important. And as I think about having clarity, I also think about part of that clarity being like the deeper piece for us to explore. Why do I want something? Or what about this really matters to me, right? The not just taking it that our first level of desire is it. Really getting like in Simon Sinek's world, it's okay, what's the deeper why? And, other people have different ways of describing it, but yeah, really looking at that, the deeper places before we go to communicate with our partners, which, again, you can journal, you can use friends, you can use coaches, therapists, whatever it takes to be able to then communicate more clearly.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing, because I think communication is it's a beautiful way of expanding ourselves, and even when we're communicating to someone else, we're also communicating to ourselves.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for doing this. I love our conversations, and there's a whole world that feels like it's opened up, that people can use some of these tools and then also can really start exploring for themselves. All right, am I saying what I need to say? Am I settling? Are there ways that I'm defending? All some just great questions for this.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.